Our story begins at the Heart Home City Tag Battle Tournament, where Ash and Paul are getting through there. I believe this is their semi-finals round, where they are both, again, reluctant to team up. We already know how this goes, but today the story changes drastically. As not only does Paul send in a tired, injured, and fatigued Chimchar, and Ash sends out his battle-ready Turtwig. Most of the battle actually goes the same, except when Chimchar gets pinned by that Zangoose. Paul, in fact, thinks about it for a bit, and then he starts seeing it. Chimchar's fear, Chimchar's, cowardly side, and he then thinks to himself, this might be it. This is perfect. Meanwhile, Turtwig's not doing so well. You're getting beat up by a Zangoose, buddy. It's, yeah, that ain't going so well. Bullet Punch, Metal Claw, Turtwig will actually be getting mixed up here. Like, he gets some good hits, and he gets a tackle, does a little bit of a razor leap, but again, getting mixed up. And so this is where Paul actually starts encouraging Chimchar and states, remember that night you actually took on all those Zangoose? When you were afraid, remember how much power you had to overcome that little fear? This is your chance to prove that you're more than something worthless, to prove that you're something more than anything that has ever kept you down. Don't use that fear. No, turn that fear. Matter of fact, use that fear, and turn it into anger. Use it, Chimchar, and unlock your true potential. And so Chimchar actually does this, and it actually ignites his blaze ability, but he's still kind of rampaging. So Paul simply tells him to attack, and it's a blaze powered Chimchar. Whatever happens to that Zangoose is happening to that Zangoose. So let's start off. Paul actually starts giving out commands, and it takes Chimchar a minute because he's still wild and uncontrollable. So Paul screams at him, Flame Wheel, do as I say, Flame Wheel, and Chimchar rams into Zangoose with a blaze-powered Flame Wheel, sending it back. However, Zangoose goes for a flamethrower, and this actually turns out to increase not only the blaze-powered flame on Chimchar's tail, but just the power in general. And this is where Metagross actually uses Sidekick to hold him at bay. And well, Chimchar is basically fighting a 2 against 1 while Paul's encouraging him to take them both down. However, Turtwig is starting to get up, and Ash tells him, we're not going to let them leave us behind, right? We're not going to allow them to show us up here. Get up, Turtwig, and show them just how strong you are. And Ash's resolve and Turtwig's resolve both seem to ignite something, and Turtwig fully evolves into Grotle. Now, the reason why I'm having this early is because it felt perfect for it, Turtwig was already the most highly potential member of the team before Chimchar even showed up, and was even considered, and in all honesty, should have been the ace, as again, it's been a while since Ash had a very strong, fully evolved grass type, and this actually could have allowed him to basically grow as a trainer and learn, but they simply shafted him from Chimchar. And so Grotle does land a razor leaf, and this is where he and Paul really start making it work, where Turtwig actually unveils his new move, that being Rock Climb, a lot earlier in the anime. The reason why I'm having this is because when Pokemon do normally evolve, they not only get a stat boost, but a new move as well. So Rock Climb actually being able to be the one to deal damage to Zangoose, and actually allows Chimchar to utilize his now amplified blaze to launch a devastating flamethrower. And what I mean, this is so devastating that Metagross gets like engulfed in it. Like, you can't even see a silhouette. Like, straight up just gone in the flamethrower. And then, boom. There you have it. Metagross is just defeated. Completely roasted, too, and slightly melted. But, hey, that's a win, ain't it? And so, Paul and Ash both kind of have different results upon this. Ash is actually happy that his Grotle evolved, but is disappointed that Paul used Chimchar still, while Paul is just absolutely proud. Now, the next match would actually be Don and Conway using Heracross and Buizel. However, I'm going to change this up. since Ash does not have Chimchar here, because Paul is keeping him, Paul's Elekid still evolves into Electabuzz, just like in the original. However, Ash uses Staravia, and Staravia uses Brave Bird to take out Heracross, but again, it's still an unperfected move, and this causes Staraptor to kind of like fall out the sky of a little bit, or, you know, kind of like wince in pain a lot more than it should. And so, that pretty much ends the tournament. Ash and Paul win. But now, let's actually talk about something. And we're going to talk about what happens to Paul after this. And I am going to be doing, you know, both POVs of Ash and Paul from this point on. But let's talk about Paul. His training of Chimchar would actually be slightly lighter. He's taking it easier on Chimchar. Slightly. Okay? Because Chimchar gave him what he wanted. So, he actually utilizes Chimchar's anger of always being the punching bag of the team to actually elevate himself here. And this actually, in combination with the likes of Ursaring, Torterra, and now Electabuzz and Murkrow, actually does cause Chimchar to evolve, and this causes Monferno to be a bit more battle hungry and a lot more dangerous than the original, and he learns a new move that he thinks could definitely make himself stronger, and instead of learning Mach Punch, he learns Power Up Punch instead, which I actually do think is a much better move for a Pokemon that wants to get stronger quicker. Now, let's fast forward to Ash. Now, some things do happen, just like in the original. And Dawn and Ash do switch out. And I'm actually going to have that be earlier, or at least, you know, one episode earlier than the original. However, Ash sees that Grotle is struggling with his new size and not really learning how to be mobile. But Ash this time is a lot better of a trainer. Because again, Ash actually realizes, wait a minute, I know exactly who I could bring for this. So Ash runs to the Pokemon Center. And, well, I'm going to say that this is where, you know, he also realizes that Dawn and him are more compatible with the opposite Pokemon. So let's just say that they switch here instead of just earlier than the original. And Ash makes a call to bring back Dawnfan. Now, the reason why I'm having this happen is because Ash really could have used his old Pokemon a lot more, and this actually gives Ash that theme of, oh yeah, I still can use my older Pokemon to help train my newer ones. And again, I will have that theme play out when I make the sequel to this series. So, with that being said, Ash actually has Dawnfan and Grotle go head-to-head with each other. And this actually results in Grotle being able to fully manipulate his Rock Climb, but also because he has to go head-to-head with Dawnfan, a much higher level and a much more experienced Mon, this helps Grotle's endurance and durability. So we would actually see Rock Climb and Rollout clash constantly. And even at times where Ash just simply wants Grotle to sit there and take it. Understanding that Grotle is going to be more immobile, he does manage to, well, increase Grotle's endurance and help him realize just how mobile he can actually be by helping Grotle kind of copy how Dawnfan moves on a regular basis. And so this helps Grotle's training a lot better. Now, as for Staravia, he actually helps it use Brave Bird at least a consecutive number of times before Staravia does collapse. As for Buizel, he and Ash do manage to get in sync with each other, and by the end of this episode, or by the end of this training section, Grotle has a much better understanding of how he can maneuver and actually utilize his body better. Now, normally the next episode would be Tears for Fears. However, I got a different episode, right? This is going to be called Tears of Steel, where Ash and the group actually come across a Lairon. This is actually going to take place, Aron, and this is going to take place instead of the Hippopotas episode, so that one's going to just get, unfortunately, thrown out entirely. And so Ash actually does manage to not only befriend this Lairon, but actually helps it get over its fears of, well, being isolated alone, because it's going to be the runt of its group here. And so this is where Lairon actually forms a bond. I know I said Lairon again. Aron actually forms a bond with Grotle. And this is actually important because Grotle used to be the protector, or at least the leader, of a small patch of Pokemon in his woods. So this means that Aron and Grotle do form this sort of like brotherly relationship. And so Ash actually begins to train Aron to understand him. With a more competent Ash, this also means that he and Pikachu are also a lot more in sync. And then he finds out Aron's moveset is Iron Head, Dig, Metal Sound, which lowers the opponent's defense, and Double Edge. However, he's curious on why it doesn't affect him, till he realizes his ability is Rocket. And then, during one of the training sections with his Pokemon, Pikachu actually utilizes the Counter Shield for the very first time when sparring against Grotle and deflecting a volley of Razor Leafs. And Ash is like, nah, we about to cook with this one real quick. So he starts teaching the Counter Shield to every other Pokemon that can actually manage it. So, fast forward, we would then go to Ash's battle with Fantina. And this is going to play out differently, as Ash is utilizing Pikachu, Buizel, and Grotle in this one. So the first match is actually going to be Fantina using her Gengar. Now, Ash in the original used Buizel. But keep in mind, this is not only a stronger, more battle hardened, and a much more gluttony Buizel. Like, he loves to fight. Like, he ain't here to save the day, he just likes to fight. Now, the first part of this battle does begin. Gengar utilizes Shadow Ball and actually uses a flurry of them to try and hit Buizel. However, Ash has Buizel utilize Water Gun and actually begins to have him, well, spin. Not an entirely a counter shield, but this is to kind of make sure Buizel's all of his angles are covered. And so Buizel actually gets a boost from Swift Swim because, again, all the water eventually dissipates and starts raining. So Ash calls for an Aqua Jet, and this actually does hit Gengar a lot faster than the original because, again, not only is it Swift Swim, Buizel's far better trained. And this is where we also see Gengar try to go for Hypnosis, and then Ash deploys his Water Gun Counter Shield, which obviously does beat up here Gengar. And then he goes for another Aqua Jet because, again, Swift Swim gets activated from the falling water that pretty much just, comes down from the Counter Shield, and this again nails Gengar incredibly fast. And this is where Gengar managed to launch a Dark Pulse, which does manage to hit Buizel. However, Ash utilizes Sonic Boom at that range to actually get the Dark Pulse off of him, and well, this actually cuts through it because it's a much stronger Buizel. So Gengar, now desperate at this point, or Fantina, now desperate at this point, has Gengar try and deploy a volley of Shadow Balls. However, before he can launch it, Ash has Buizel utilize a Water Gun that comes out way faster. Let's realize what I said. No diddy. Comes out way faster than before and pushes all the Shadow Balls out the way to let it land. And then Ash follows up with a Aqua Jet, nailing it on Gengar and sending him sprawling back into the wall, unable to battle. Ash recalls Buizel and sends out Pikachu, and then Fantina sends out her Drifloon. Now, this one is going to result in a tie. The reason why I'm saying that is because Fantina's now adjusted to the Counter Shield strategy and actually realizes that, well, maybe she could try and overwhelm it. So she lands a Will-O-Wisp on Pikachu. However, Pikachu takes advantage of the Flying type weakness, or, the Flying type typing of Drifloon, and lands multiple Thunderbolts on him. And even despite that, having the whole Will-O-Wisp thing happen to him, he's still able to use Quick Attack to get around a majority of her attacks and still land them. However, when Pikachu actually lands an Iron Tail that actually looks like it's going to end it, Fantina actually deploys the move Explode, which takes out both Drifloon and Pikachu, thus causing the tie. This is where Ash sends out Grotle for the last battle against Fantina's Mismagius. And Grotle looks like it's ready. It's ready for everything. Remembering it's training with Donphan. Remembering it's training with, all of other Ash's Pokemon. Remembering it's training with his team. Grotle's ready for this. And so Fantina starts off with Shadow Balls, Dark Pulses, and Psybeams, as she realizes that, oh, well, this is a simple, immobile Pokemon. However, Grotle barely budges from it, and she's actually surprised by this. No Pokemon's been able to just sit there and withstand all that damage. And so Fantina actually tries to go for a Hypnosis. However, Ash tells it to go for a Razor Leaf immediately. And this is where the Hypnosis does land, but the Razor Leaf already goes through and connects with Miss Maggie is. And so this actually sends her flying back into the wall, and Fantina is shocked by this. I mean, Grotle has a lot of power for a second stage Pokemon. However, when she tries to land a Psybeam, or when she does land a Psybeam, this immediately wakes Grotle up, and well, he performs a rock climb. However, not to actually attack Miss Magius with the elevation point, but he actually utilizes it to get above her and then land another Razor Leaf, slamming her into the ground, and then coming down with the claws of rock climb, pretty much ending her right then and there. And Ash is super proud of Grotle and the work that he's done, and gets his next gym badge. Now, another episode I'm going to have earlier, so this is actually going to take place after Fantina's gym battle, is to catch a Gible. This is going to happen far earlier than the original. Ash comes across a Gible and actually has a battle with Barry for it, where Grotle actually beats his Empoleon, and actually does it with a rock climb and Razor Leaf combo. So, again, Grotle is still on top here. However, this episode does result in so many Draco Meteor fails that Ash does take Gible in, and Gible actually forms a lovely little bond with Aron, who kind of scolds Gible for always hitting Piplup, but again, he also finds it amusing. So at the end of the episode, Ash gets Gible and actually begins to train him. But that's not where we're going to leave it off here, okay? We're going to actually leave this all here with Paul getting his 4th gym badge and actually telling Maylene how weak of a gym leader she is. And that's where we're going to leave it off here, you guys. Please comment down below, like and subscribe and share with your friends. And I'll see you guys for the next part, where we'll be introducing Houndoom and Ash's egg.